Karoline Leavitt was dared to sing in front of a room full of politicians and reporters, but no one was ready for what happened next. Her voice stunned the crowd, and by the next morning, she was a viral sensation. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. It started as a joke, literally. Karoline Leavitt, known across the political sphere for her fiery speeches, unwavering opinions, and confident stage presence, found herself in a setting far removed from the debate stage. This wasn't Washington. This wasn't a rally. This was a candlelit ballroom in downtown Manchester, New Hampshire. A charity gala filled with local dignitaries, reporters, business leaders, and a few familiar political faces. The mood was light. There was music, laughter, clinking glasses, and the kind of easy conversation that only happens when no one is campaigning and everyone has traded in suits for formal evening wear. Karoline herself wore a sleek, midnight blue dress and had let her guard down, enjoying the evening like everyone else. The MC, halfway through a segment between dinner and dessert, had begun calling out audience members for light-hearted challenges, auction, bids, trivia questions, and even karaoke dares. It was harmless fun. Then came the moment. Someone, perhaps emboldened by a bit of champagne or just feeling cheeky, shouted from one of the front tables, "Hey, Karoline, why don't you sing us a song?" Laughter followed. The crowd turned to her. It was the kind of suggestion designed to get a quick laugh, a throwaway comment. After all, Karoline wasn't a performer. She was a political firecracker, known for her sharp comebacks and strong convictions. People expected her to crack a joke, maybe roll her eyes and pass the spotlight to someone else. Instead, something unexpected happened. Karoline paused. She didn't laugh it off. She didn't sit back or pretend not to hear. She tilted her head, smirked slightly, and, after a moment of curious silence, stood up. At first, people assumed she was just playing along, maybe walking to the mic to deliver a punchline. Even the band looked confused. Was this part of the program? She reached. The microphone brushed her hair over her shoulder and gave a half-smile that hovered somewhere between amused and bold. You could feel the air shift. "All right," she said casually, "but don't say I didn't warn you." The ballroom fell into a low, puzzled murmur. You could hear silverware clink to a stop. People leaned forward, some eyebrows raised. The playful atmosphere was suddenly replaced by anticipation. It was the kind of moment where everyone realizes they're about to witness something, but they're not sure what. Karoline nodded at the pianist, who, looking just as unsure as everyone else, began playing the opening chords to Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, and then she sang. The first note floated into the air, clear and haunting. It wasn't perfect in the way a studio track is perfect. It was raw, real, honest. Her voice had a depth that no one expected. Smooth, yet powerful. Controlled, yet emotional. Each lyric carried weight, not just because of the words, but because of who was singing them. A politician, yes, but suddenly, that label didn't matter. Every head in the room turned. Conversations halted. Forks were placed down. Some people just stared, wide-eyed, in disbelief. Phones were slowly lifted to record, not out of politeness, but because people couldn't believe what they were hearing, and knew others wouldn't either. She wasn't performing to impress. She wasn't showing off. She was simply expressing. It was like peeling back a layer and revealing a completely different side of herself, one that no campaign trail had ever shown. By the time she reached the chorus, the energy in the room had shifted entirely. This wasn't a joke anymore. It wasn't a dare. It was a moment, one of those rare, unscripted flashes of authenticity that makes everyone stop and say, "Did that really just happen?" Some guests had tears in their eyes. Others simply smiled in stunned silence. The political figure they thought they knew had just revealed something deeply personal, deeply human. And when the final note faded into silence, there was a beat, just one, of stunned stillness. Then the applause came, loud, thunderous, real. People stood, not out of obligation or politeness, but because they'd been moved. Karoline gave a small, embarrassed curtsy, smiling as if she herself couldn't quite believe what had just happened. What began as a joke had transformed into something unforgettable. Karoline Leavitt came to that gala as a politician, but in that moment, she became something much more. Karoline took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. The air in the ballroom felt suddenly heavy, not in a bad way, but in the way that happens when something unexpected is about to unfold. All eyes were on her, though many still carried amused, skeptical expressions. After all, this was Karoline Leavitt, the rising political star, not some trained performer. No one expected her to actually sing, let alone sing well. And then it happened. With no fanfare, no warm-up, and no grand introduction, Karoline opened her mouth and began to sing the haunting first lines of Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen's Kai, timeless masterpiece. From the very first note, everything changed. The laughter, the clinking of wine glasses, the low hum of side conversations, all of it stopped. Silence swept through the room like a wave. It wasn't forced or awkward. It was magnetic. Everyone froze. Even those in the back who weren't paying attention just moments ago slowly turned their heads. Her voice rang out, unexpectedly rich, haunting, and deeply soulful. It wasn't the kind of voice you'd expect from someone in politics. It was controlled yet raw, delicate yet powerful. She didn't mimic anyone. She didn't try to belt it like a pop diva or lean into theatrics. Instead, she sang with honesty. Each note grounded in emotion, each lyric carefully delivered as if the song was a story she had lived through herself. And in that moment, she wasn't Karoline the candidate. She was something else entirely, an artist, a storyteller, a woman revealing something deeply personal through music. People stared in disbelief. Some sat forward in their seats, jaws slightly open. A few reached for their phones, slowly and quietly, like they were afraid to interrupt whatever spell had just been cast. They didn't want to miss it. Or worse, forget it. One guest, halfway to the bar, stopped mid-step and just stood there, transfixed. Even the band, caught off guard, took a moment to react. The pianist, who had started playing softly just to accompany the impromptu moment, locked eyes with the drummer. A nod passed between them, and they adjusted, slipping into a subtle, supportive rhythm, letting her voice take the lead. No one had rehearsed this. No one had prepared for this. But somehow it didn't matter. By the time she reached the chorus, Hallelujah, there was something almost sacred in the air. A kind of collective awe. It was the type of silence filled with emotion, not emptiness. And the longer she sang, the more that silence deepened, thickened, wrapped itself around the room like a velvet curtain. Some guests blinked away tears. Others placed their hands over their hearts. You could feel the energy shift, not just in the room, but in people's hearts. There was no judgment, no politics, no side-taking, just music, just the vulnerability of one person standing in front of hundreds, offering a piece of herself. For a few brief minutes, Karoline's voice became the only thing that existed. It echoed softly against the walls, carried through the chandeliers, and settled like a hush over the entire crowd. She didn't miss a note. She didn't stumble or shy away from the emotional peaks of the song. If anything, she leaned into them, her voice growing stronger, more confident with each verse. What made it so powerful wasn't just the quality of her voice, but the courage it took to do it. She wasn't hiding behind a persona or a polished image. She wasn't making a statement or trying to go viral. She was simply expressing. And that sincerity made every word of the song hit harder. When she sang, "I did my best," it wasn't much. You could hear people exhale, soft, emotional breaths they hadn't realized they were holding. By the final chorus, the entire room had changed. Every single person was captivated. No one was checking their phones. No one was whispering to their neighbors. They were all locked into her voice, her presence, the emotion she was giving them without asking for anything in return. And just like that, in a single, unplanned moment, Karoline Leavitt had gone from being a well-known political figure to something no one saw coming. A performer who could move a room without saying a word about policy or politics. When the last note floated into silence and she lowered the microphone, it took the crowd a beat to respond. But when they did, it was thunderous. To most of the country, Karoline Leavitt is a name that sparks instant recognition and strong reactions. She's known as the rising conservative firebrand, a bold voice in American politics. From fiery TV appearances to rally stages packed with supporters, Karoline has built a reputation for being unapologetic, sharp-tongued, and fearless. She first made headlines as one of the youngest candidates ever to run for Congress. Before that, she worked as a White House assistant press secretary under the Trump administration, earning praise and criticism in equal measure. She became a symbol of youthful energy in a world often dominated by political veterans. People admired, or challenged her, for her confidence, her stance on issues, and her ability to handle pressure like a seasoned pro. She was, in every way, a polished political figure. But what happened at that charity gala, the moment she sang hallelujah and left a room full of skeptics speechless, was something different. It was the kind of moment that peeled back the public persona and revealed a deeper, more personal layer. One that most people didn't even know existed. After the performance, as videos flooded social media and clips circulated on news outlets, the question began to spread. Wait, does Karoline Leavitt actually have a background in music? The answer, it turns out, is yes. Not many people knew it because she never made it part of her public identity. But music had been an early passion in Karoline's life. In interviews that followed the performance, she opened up about a side of her past she had rarely talked about. Growing up in the quiet town of Atkinson, New Hampshire, Karoline wasn't just surrounded by politics. She was surrounded by music. Her mother played piano, often filling the house with soft melodies in the early mornings or lullabies late at night. Her father, a fan of classic rock and roll. He loved old-school ballads and wasn't shy about singing along to his favorite records. Their home wasn't a stage, but it was full of rhythm. Music was always in the background, sometimes in the form of Sunday morning hymns, other times as Beatles songs played on old speakers in the kitchen, and Karoline, she was right in the middle of it. As a child, she sang in the local church choir, where she learned to harmonize, follow pitch, and perform in front of small crowds. She also took part in school plays and talent shows, often earning quiet praise from teachers and classmates who were surprised by her natural tone and vocal strength. But one of her favorite memories was far more low-key. Recording covers on her laptop as a teenager, using a cheap microphone and whatever free audio software she could find. She'd belt out everything from Adele to Norah Jones to country ballads. Not to post online, not for fame, but because singing made her feel free. Still, despite her love for music, she never saw it as a path. In high school, her focus shifted. She developed an interest in journalism, government, and public speaking. That passion for communication evolved quickly into a career in politics, and once that door opened, music slowly faded into the background. It wasn't a conscious decision to leave it behind. It just happened. You get older, and suddenly you're chasing a career, responsibilities pile up, and before you know it, the things you loved become things you used to love, Karoline said in an interview following the gala. Music was always in me. I just stopped letting it out. The night of the performance, she hadn't planned to sing. In fact, she hadn't sung in front of an audience for years. That dare, thrown out as a joke, was meant to get a laugh, not a life-changing response. But in that split second, something inside her said, why not? It was bold, spontaneous, unscripted, just like Karoline, and when she took the mic and began to sing, it was like opening a door she hadn't realized had been locked. I never had the courage to sing in front of a crowd like that, she later admitted. It took a joke to bring it out of me. In truth, it wasn't a joke at all. It was a reminder, not just to her, but to everyone, that sometimes the things we leave behind are the very things that make us who we are. And in that moment, the world didn't see just a political figure. They saw a person, multi-layered, deeply human, and braver than anyone expected. It didn't take long. Within moments of Karoline Leavitt's unplanned performance at the charity gala, phones were already out. Dozens of guests had recorded the moment she stood under soft stage lights, took a breath, and delivered a soul-stirring rendition of Hallelujah that silenced the room. But what happened next? That was something even Karoline herself could never have imagined. Just hours later, one short clip made its way to Twitter X, posted by a local reporter in attendance. The caption read, "Karoline Leavitt was dared to sing at a gala. She just blew the roof off." It was only 53 seconds long, just a glimpse of the performance, but it was enough. By morning, the video had been viewed over 2 million times. The reactions came fast, and they came from everywhere. First were her supporters, the people who had followed her political journey from the start. They flooded the comments with praise, calling her multi-talented, gutsy, and unbelievably real. Many said they had tears in their eyes watching the clip, not because of politics, but because the performance had touched them on a human level. Then came something more surprising: acknowledgement from her critics. People who didn't agree with her politically admitted that her voice was genuinely beautiful and shockingly good. Some said they'd never liked her politics, but couldn't deny the power and authenticity of her performance. One viral comment read, "Look, I don't agree with her views, but talent is talent. That took guts, and she nailed it. It was a rare moment of unity on the internet, a place where people who normally clashed over ideology found themselves in agreement." For once, the comment sections weren't just battlegrounds. They were a chorus of stunned applause, and it didn't stop there. Celebrities started chiming in. Country pop singer Jessie James Decker reposted the clip to her Instagram story, writing, "Girl's got pipes, who knew?" Other influencers and entertainers followed. YouTubers, podcasters, and even a few voice coaches began breaking down the video, praising her control, tone, and emotional delivery. Then came the reaction videos. YouTube and TikTok were soon overflowing with creators reacting to Karoline's performance in real time. Some were shocked, others were moved. A few sat in complete silence as her voice played in the background, their expressions shifting from skepticism to awe. One TikToker, known for critiquing political speeches, posted a video titled, "Okay, I did not expect this from Karoline Leavitt." The clip got over 3 million views in under 48 hours. The public was fascinated. Could someone known for high-stakes political debates, fiery sound bites, and hardline policy takes also be an artist? A performer with soul, vulnerability, and real musical talent? Suddenly, people weren't just talking about Karoline's political future. They were talking about her humanity. The performance didn't just entertain. It transformed her image. It added a dimension that no campaign ad, debate, or televised interview ever could. Because in that moment, Karoline wasn't playing to a base. She wasn't arguing her stance. She wasn't defending a position. She was just a person, someone, with fears, dreams, and a voice that had been hiding in the shadows of her public life for far too long, and that's what made it powerful. A single song, sung without preparation, managed to cut through the noise of modern politics. It didn't matter if you were red or blue, left or right. For once, people just listened, not to a political message, but to the person behind the platform. Karoline later commented on the unexpected reaction. "It was overwhelming, in the best way. I never thought something so personal would resonate with so many people. But maybe that's what we need more of. Moments that show we're human first." And she was right. The performance reminded the public that behind every podium, every headline, every debate stage, there's a person with a past, a family, hidden talents, and emotions. And sometimes it takes an unscripted moment to bring that out. Whether or not Karoline ever sings in public again, one thing is certain. That night, with no political agenda and no plan, she struck a chord that reached far beyond the ballroom and straight into the hearts of millions. As the final note of Hallelujah faded into the air, time seemed to freeze. There was a beat of silence, not awkward, not hesitant, just stunned. A stillness so full of energy, it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. And then, it happened. A roar of applause erupted from every corner of the ballroom. The audience rose to their feet in waves. Some clapped wildly, others whistled. A few stood there with hands pressed to their hearts, visibly moved. Smiles lit up faces all around the room. There were even tears, real, unexpected tears, on the cheeks of people who had come expecting policy speeches and handshakes, not raw emotion from a politician behind a microphone. It wasn't just applause. It was recognition. Recognition that something real had just happened, something you couldn't plan, rehearse, or spin. At center stage, Karoline Leavitt stood, cheeks flushed, eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and joy. She laughed, a light, genuine sound that cut through the clapping, and gave a small, almost shy curtsy. It was the kind of moment you see in movies but rarely witness in real life. Unscripted, unfiltered, pure. People leaned over to each other and whispered, "Can you believe that?" One guest said aloud, "That girl can sing." Another just shook their head in disbelief and murmured, "We did not see that coming." But the story didn't end there. Over the days that followed, the video of Karoline's performance continued to spread across social media. Local news stations picked it up first, then national outlets. Radio shows discussed it, podcasters broke it down, reaction videos gained millions of views, and soon the world began to take notice. She was no longer just Karoline Leavitt, political firebrand. She had become something more, a reminder that even the most public figures carry private passions. That beneath every suit, soundbite, and slogan is a person, multifaceted, full of surprises, and deeply human. Invitations started pouring in. One of the first was from a veterans organization in New Hampshire. They had seen the clip and reached out with a special request. Would Karoline sing the national anthem at their upcoming event? She didn't hesitate. "It would be an honor," she replied. That event, held at a packed memorial field on a crisp Saturday morning, was just as powerful. Karoline stood at the center of the stadium, hand over heart, and sang the Star-Spangled Banner with the same sincerity and control she'd shown at the gala. And once again, the crowd responded with thunderous applause, this time accompanied by salutes, tears, and a few standing ovations from veterans who said they hadn't been that moved in years. Then came something unexpected. A music producer from Nashville, known for working with emerging country pop artists, reached out through her team. He had seen the gala video and was intrigued, not just by her voice, but by the story behind it. He asked a simple question. "Would you ever consider recording a single?" Karoline was stunned. Music, after all, wasn't part of the plan. Her career was, and still is, focused on public service, on policy, on being a voice for her generation. But for the first time in a long time, she began to wonder, what if? She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. In a follow-up interview, when asked about her future with music, Karoline smiled and said, "I'll never stop being who I am. Politics is my calling, but music reminds me that there's more to us than just our titles. We're all a little more human than we let on." That line, simple, honest, and heartfelt, summed up the moment better than any headline ever could, because that's what the world saw in Karoline Leavitt that night. They didn't just see a polished candidate. They saw a woman brave enough to be vulnerable. A woman who dared to sing when no one expected it, and did so beautifully. A woman who reminded everyone watching that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it sings. And maybe that's the real legacy of that night. Not just a viral video, not just applause, but a quiet invitation to remember that behind every podium stands a person. And every once in a while, that person sings a note that echoes far beyond the room. So what started as a light-hearted dare turned into an unforgettable moment, one that reminded everyone in the room, and the millions who later watched online, that sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones we never expected to hear. Karoline Leavitt may have entered that gala as a politician, but she left it as a performer. And next time someone says, "Hey, sing us a song," they might just mean it.